Welcome everybody to the Realberg Experience, a podcast for creative individuals from all walks of life. We talk to rap stars, politicians, photographers, you name it. Maintain and entertain, I bet the show gon' get famous. So go and take a seat and let the people get to meet the innovative individual that you will be. Let's go. Welcome everybody to the Realberg Experience, the podcast for creative individuals from all walks of life. I'm your host, DP, and today we welcome a special guest. He is known around town for hosting two of the best nightclubs in Key West. He is a family man who's now crossed over into the realms of charting the 7 Seas. Now also throwing his hat into the ballot for Commissioner of District 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my special guest, Kimball Ingram. Welcome, Kimball. How you doing today?
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Definitely a pleasure. So how you doing today, Kimball? For my audience that doesn't know you, how you doing today, Kimball?
I'm doing pretty well today. It's been a strange few months. The first half of the year is it started off great. 2020 was, I'd give it a 4 or 5 stars for the first 2.5 months, and now it's pretty much a 1 star. So it's started out well and dropped off. So I'm working. I'm working really hard to keep my head up. It's been a struggle. We were talking earlier. I'm trying to reinvent myself a little bit. I've had a few knocks and trying to just rally through that as you do in life. But I'm lucky. I've got my wife and daughter who are fantastic, and I'm in better shape than certainly some. But I'm no longer involved with the bar that I had that you mentioned.
Okay, so for the people that don't know, let them know which bars that it was.
Sure, I was a co-owner in Aqua and Sidebar, and Back Bar, which gets lost a little bit. So that was the Aquaplex, the one big complex. And we treated Aqua and the Sidebar separately, but it's been closed more than it's been opened because the state has mandated it. We don't have food, didn't have food. I think now they're trying to put a little kitchen in to try and have food. And I just don't have the means to sit there and pay thousands of dollars every month. So the decision was made to sell my share. Fortunately, it's a family business. My father was my partner. He had enough money to say, I will buy out your share. We knew basically what the business was worth and what the debt there was. And that was a good sort of fatherly thing to do because it puts me in a nice position where I have a little bit of money in the bank and I can decide how to reinvent myself, but it's not dire straits. Which a lot of people who had their own business and used their savings and used their homes and the equity to try and survive, and who didn't. So I'm in a better shape than that. But for the last 8 years, every day has been going into the bar and trying to make it better. And so now it's not there.
So now that the bars are closed, what are you going to be doing now?
So I had started a charter company called Aquaholics. Because I had Aqua, so Aquaholics. And I did it in my spare time. It was fun for me. It got me out on the boat because I did go to the bar every day. It helped pay for the boat, and it got me out onto the water periodically. And I'm doing that full time. I got a boat out at the Perry Hotel, and I'm building the company. So,
what exactly do you do on the boat?
We do sandbar trips. We do snorkeling, dolphin excursions. It's a tri-tune, so it's what a lot of people would consider lake boats. They're getting more popular, but it's easy to get on, easy to get off. It's like a living room on the sea, I just go out to the Gulf side.
So you go out to like the Gulf, or you go to like the islands, or what do you? Boca Chica or something like that?
Not Boca Chica so much. I try and stay out of the Atlantic. If you get swells, the boat doesn't do that well. It does really well in chop. It cuts right through it. So even in the wintertime when it's choppy, it's a really lovely, smooth ride. But we go out to Mud Key and Snipes and Marvin's, or we'll go up into the lakes and Boca Grande and Woman Key. We will go and look for dolphins out in that area. Do snorkeling in a variety of different places. It's just a fun day out, and I like families, little kids. You've got a child, so if you're looking for a boat that's friendly for kids, I've got a 2.5-year-old. So we have, we've got beach toys on the boat. I've got extra life jackets for kids.
How many people could fit on that boat?
Well, it's an uninspected vessel, which means that I can take 6. It can fit up to 13 technically,
Okay.
But I only take 6 at a time.
Understandable.
So you have lots of room, and you can bring all your bags, and we got a bunch of coolers with ice.
Awesome. So you have the aqua haulers going, and at the same time, you've also thrown your hat into the ballot for commissioner
Yep.
of District 3. How did that come about?
It came about when St. Patrick's Day, the bars were ordered closed at 5 o'clock. And that would have been a big night for us. And we didn't know how long we'd be closed down for. And I was a little bit tweaked at the city because it is a big night. And I understand the pandemic and I understand protecting everyone. But at the time, nobody really understood where we were. And I just thought it was a somewhat rash decision without forethought. We closed as we were supposed to, and a number of places didn't. And there was no recourse for those places that didn't. So that angered me. I lost probably 10 grand that night. That was a big night, for us. I know everybody thinks if you have a bar, it's just a money factory, but you've got debt and you've got all sorts of big expenses, and that was important to us. So we closed as we were asked to do. I saw other people stay open. And then we tried to follow all the rules. So the state said you can have to-go drinks as long as it had a lid. And the DVPR, which is the professional regulation folks, had put things out into the press that said, look, we're not going to fuss if you sell to-go drinks, which is great because in Key West, we've been selling to-go drinks forever. And so we got some plastic cups and lids and said, right, no problem. There's a one-way system, in, out, to-go drinks. And code showed up almost every day. And we weren't selling a lot. And when they showed up, it was a different set of rules, a different set of guidelines. There was no clarity. There was no communication about changes. And I consistently said, look, we're trying to stay within the rules. We've got all of these places that really don't sell food, that are selling nachos and staying open, and you're not bothering them. And there were some regulations about 50% of income being from food or greater. And in any case, there were just a lot of inconsistencies with code enforcement and with the city, and it made it really hard to even try and get my employees to have any sort of income. I wasn't going to have enough to pay the bills, but we were trying to support our employees. And it made me angry. And my wife and I sat down and decided that you could rant on Facebook, or you could do something. And so we looked at District 3, and Billy Wardlow, who is a very nice man, has never had an opponent. And he's there 11 years now. And we thought, well, that seems wrong. Everybody, I don't care who you are, everybody should have an opponent because it forces you to say what you believe in. I thought, well, you know what, we're gonna run, if for no other reason to give him an opponent. Second reason, I started really looking at the city, and I had the business for 8 years, and my business partner's an architect in town and understands how to go through building and additions and painting, and understands permitting and all that. But my experience is that it's incredibly hard to get anything done in this town. So we had a pretty big bar that had pretty good cash flow. And when we wanted to do something, it was difficult. And I had an expert that cost me nothing. And it was still difficult to do stuff. So you start talking about now, you listen to some of the candidates, say in District 6, which has Bahama Village, and they talk about rejuvenating Bahama Village and having young people and some startups and some pop-ups and doing fun things, or you talk about reinventing Duval Street and having creative stores and having artists come in and having new bars and new restaurants and whatever it is. But you can't get somebody who has great ideas and great energy and a little bit of money, because the city is so hard to work with. in the building department and in code enforcement. And it's just so hard, and it takes time and it takes money. And if you look at yourself and say, I want to open a photography studio,
Yeah.
to get the permits, to get the build out, to do everything costs a massive amount.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't include the normal stuff with contractors, and that's just normal business. The city is not a helpful partner, in my opinion. I just thought somebody needs to be on the commission who understands hospitality, which is obviously a major part of this town, and understand some of the challenges that you face. And I'll circle back around to St. Patrick's Day. The restaurants that had to close down, they'd ordered stuff for that weekend because it was going to be a big weekend. So by saying you're closing at 5 o'clock, so before dinner on that day, not only do you have lost revenues, but you have wasted money. I had a bar, so beer goes bad after a while, but bourbon doesn't, vodka doesn't. So I was better than some. But if you have lettuce, if you have meat, if you have all of those things that a restaurant has, what do you do with it? You just have to throw it away. And I don't think having said, you know what, we need to close because of safety concerns, close at the end of business. You can't convince me that extra 6 hours after having been open for the entire week and into the weekend would have created a massive problem. But it would have been helpful to all of the small businesses. And I don't think the commission thinks that way, for whatever reason, because you have people who own some small businesses. But I also don't think that a lot of the commissioners have felt the pain of this. And again, we talked about it. You do weddings and you do a lot of things that are associated with the tourist industry. And so this has affected you as it's affected me. I no longer have what I thought was going to be my business for the rest of my life. And the construction never stopped. So apparently, coronavirus didn't realize that construction workers could get sick. And the grocery stores certainly didn't close. And I could go through all the different commissioners, and it's not their fault. I'm not faulting them for having a business that wasn't as affected. But it's easy to say I understand the pain when you're not going through it. I can tell you I empathize with somebody who's got cancer.
Yeah.
But I've never had cancer. So you know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I am at the moment and why I'm running. I just think I think it's going to be a challenging next few years. And the city needs to be better at being nimble and being quick and being helpful to people who come in and want to do things in this town. And I don't think that has been the case for the last however many years.
What exactly is District 3?
So District 3, golf course, the Los Salinas, Ocean Walk, some of those apartments in that area, and then the very sort of end of Key West by the Triangle. So you've got some of Duck Avenue, some of Eagle, up to 16th. And it kind of snakes around. It's a funny little line.
So for that district, what are some of the challenges that district specifically faces?
Well, it's built on fill, so flooding moving forward is going to be a big issue. So I was lucky enough to be able to buy a house a few years ago, but I'm certainly not a long-time homeowner. And the mortgage itself is expensive because property is expensive. But on top of that, you have your wind and flood insurance. So we're in a flood zone. And it's not even kind of in a flood zone. It is in a flood zone. So you either need to lift your house up out of the flood plain, so 6, 7, 8 feet. I'm not quite exactly sure how much it is. But you need to lift the entire house or rebuild a house. Or you pay for flood insurance. And I understand that. But it makes it prohibitive for a lot of people to be able to afford a house. It doubles my mortgage. So my house payment, because I'm a new homeowner, is more than it would be to rent a place. But I made that decision, to do it because in this town, and you would know this, you find a place and then all of a sudden somebody decides that the investment has run its course and they want to sell it. Now you've got to find another place. And that happens to a lot of people. And I've got a small child, and I've got my family, and
you're grown anyway. It's time.
It's a good investment and all the positives.
Yeah, get all the money back if you sell.
But honestly, my wife and I have been together for 6 years, married for 4 of it, and we had moved 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
And you can't keep doing that with family. So, we got the house and we've been there for a few years now and it's great. But that's probably the biggest issue. The other one, it's infrastructure. You got to have sidewalks on places. You got to have roads that are repaved. And I've looked at the last few years of the cost overruns with some of the capital projects in the city. And I think City Hall is great. It's lovely. It's also $20 million over budget. You can do a lot with $20 million. Yeah. So you can talk about, moving forward, when we talk about Duval Street, you can say, oh my God, there was $200,000 wasted on an idea like Mall and Duval. And I get that. You don't want to waste money. But I'd rather take $200,000 and try something new and decide that's not quite right, or it is right, or whatever the answer is, as opposed to $20 million, which is a lot more.
Yes.
To say, the building was supposed to be this much, but gosh, it was more. I mean, it's a huge amount of money.
20 million. Can I just get one?
That's but you look at those numbers and they're like make believe. But you can go backwards and you can, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
100%.
They took down the old City Hall, and there was a plan for a combined City Hall, fire department, parking garage downtown. Whether you agree with the parking garage or not, there was a plan for it. And there was a budget for it, and there was a number. And then they decided that they wanted to recondition the school on the corner. Okay. So now you spend, it was $7, $8, or $9 million for the fire department, and it's fantastic. My dad designed it, and I like it. It's great. But then you also go and build the City Hall, and that's a whole nother project so you're just spending money.
They've done more than just that fire department, right? Because it's okay. You got the police station.
Well, that's before. So you've got you had the main fire department and main police station are connected. So you built that, and that was prior. And then you had sort of second phase, and they had the old City Hall, which is on the corner of Angela and Simonton, and they tore it down. And they had a plan for the fire department, City Hall, and a parking facility. And then the powers that be at the time, which included my opponent, said, no, we want to build a separate City Hall. And they priced it out, and they said it's going to cost, and I believe my numbers are correct. I always say I've got a 90-10. 90% of the time I'm right, 10% of the time I'm making it interesting. And they said, this is going to be a $7 to $8 million project to rehab it. Now, the school board that owned the building had decided not to do it because they said it's just way too expensive. We're going to build a whole new building. We're not going to rehab it because the cost of rehabbing it would be just astronomical. But the city said, no, we're clearly more clever. Made an exchange, bought the building, whatever they did, they got it, and they said, it's going to cost $7 million, $8 million to do. They had 2 architects, one of whom was my dad, one of whom was Mr. Pope, I believe, and they both came in at around the same and said, no, this is going to cost $16 to $17 million. So you've already got a $10 million swing there. And they said, you're clearly wrong. I mean, what do you guys know? And they started building. And then 20 some odd million dollars later, they have a finished product. Well, again, you talk about infrastructure projects and say, we're spending $150,000 or $200,000 in District 3 on roadworks. Well, okay, but you just spent $20 to $30 million over what you originally were going to do to build these buildings. And I think the district is getting shortchanged. I think that money, and the finances of the city are good. We pay cash for stuff, but we pay cash for stuff because we have the tourists coming in and filling hotel rooms and buying drinks and buying food. And it gives us that amazing position to be able to do some of that stuff. But some of that money should have been put aside so that, I don't know, a pandemic comes along and you say, yeah, we're going to raise taxes by 3% with a possibility of an additional 5%, because that's our cushion, but we probably won't use it. Well, okay, you're taking some money from the bite, whose finances are good. You're shifting it around and you're doing accounting, and I just think that there needs to be some accountability. And so, yes, you can say the budget is all set and everything lines up, but decisions of the past could have been better. And I know it's easy to look backwards and say hindsight's 20/20, but even at the time, those numbers were crazy, and people were saying it's bonkers. And I think the city hall is terrific, and there's no argument that a new city hall needed to be built because or rehabbed or however you want to do it. But at some point, you can't just throw money at stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not the most fiscally conservative human being out there. I get things cost money. I had a bar. Sometimes you just have to spend. But I just think it's a lot of money.
Yes,
from the original amount that they said.
Definitely.
And I think that's a problem. So
I don't know much about Mr. Wardlow. I know he's got to be a conch though, huh?
He's a conch. He was born here. He graduated from Key West High School. He worked in the fire department for I think 30 years. He was fire chief, so he worked very hard. He retired, and he ran for city commission, and he won 500 and some odd votes to 300 and some odd votes 11 years ago. Nobody had ever run against him, and he is a nice man, and he's got a nice family. And that doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you just feel like you will handle things a bit differently.
I think I have worked in a number of different industries, and I think we're going into a very challenging time. So not only do I think the past 11 years the city has not been as nimble and quick as it could be, but everybody was doing pretty well. So lots of folks just shrugged and said, well, we're all doing well, so we'll write the check, and it's not worth the fight. And to some extent, that's what we did. I got mystery bills about new things, and I went, all right, not really worth the fight. And you write a check, and it goes away, and fine. But there are going to be some real challenges moving forward.
Yeah.
We are not this year getting the revenue from the hotels and from the restaurants. The cruise ships are not coming in, and that's nobody's fault. They're not coming in because they have decided not to cruise. So without even being controversial about cruise ships, they're not coming, and they're not coming until at least the end of the year. And so this year's budget has been completed, but next year's budget is going to be a challenge because whatever shortfalls we had this year are going to be multiplied next year. And I think people, the city needs to start thinking, okay, how are we going to trim? What are we not going to do? Because there are a lot of folks who get paid very, very good money working for the city. And I would argue that at the higher positions, I'm not talking about the staff. The staff, they work hard and they'll do whatever they're asked to do. But there are some folks at some higher positions who are paid good money. And I would argue that the city is not as efficient as it could be. And I know from my experience in the private sector, if that were the case, you would do your best to find somebody who was more efficient, who would think ahead, who would see some of the problems, and who would handle them better than they have been handled currently. So I think there's going to be some really hard decisions to make. And I look at some of the long-term commissioners, and there's this backslapping sort of mentality and, oh, haven't we done a great job? Well, my opinion, ish. You know, the city manager. It was in the paper the other day, and you know, he had a number of the commissioners, and he's had a hard job this year, and all these people I talk about are all very nice. So, you know, I'm not saying they're a bunch of jerks, but they were given. He was given 5s across the board on a scale of 1 to 5 in the terms of the job he was doing. Well, there's nobody who's a 5. If you're a 5, then you're too good for your job. And it was his first year. So you're telling me there's no room for improvement. Yeah. Even if I say you're doing a good job, congratulations, you were thrown into the pit. You know, we have a pandemic, we've got budget stuff. You've done really pretty well. Yeah. You're telling me there is no room for improvement? Because if there's room for improvement, then you're not a 5. And that's not because he's the city manager and because I haven't had anything against him. That is anything.
You're right.
If you're a 5, you need to be promoted.
You always have room for improvement, no matter what.
Always. And there may be an area that you excel at.
Even then, you have to think, like, what can I do to even be better at this? It's always
and so that circles me back around to the commission saying, hold on. You're telling me that you're rating this person the highest grade that you can. That's not his fault. Good for him. He's showing up every day and he's working really hard. But I question some of the commissioners. What are your expectations? And I would say my expectations. So Billy Wardlow, my opponent, 5s across the board. So you're telling me you have no higher expectations for our city staff, our city manager, than what has happened this year. My expectations are higher. And that's not disparaging him. He came in and it's been difficult. But shoot, it's his first year. And you're telling me that after his first year, he's got no areas to improve? I find that hard to believe.
With that being said, how are you running your campaign this year?
It's lean. I mean, this is the first campaign I've ever run. I've never run for office. It's my wife and myself, and it's mostly social media.
I think that's the world today.
I think it's the world today, but the way the districts are in Key West it's not a citywide position. And you say, well, it's a small town. Why is it not? And the idea behind it is that you get out and you can meet everybody. But we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I thought it inappropriate to go and knock on people's doors and show up and say, hi, I'm a stranger. But golly, I'd like to introduce myself in the middle of this pandemic. And so, you know, we've done some calling. I've done some mailers. Social media is out there. You've probably seen some things I've put out.
Man,
Facebook.
I actually haven't. I haven't seen them, and you know,
so
that's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem right there. I'm just thinking to myself. I've seen a few people. I saw one from Ryan. I saw some from Rick. I saw Terry. She got him. Yeah, Terry.
So, so it's my first campaign, and some of the advice that you get is the first campaign is always preparation for the second campaign because you have to learn. Hopefully, I'll squeak it by. But yeah, there's a learning process, and I know lots of folks have 20 and 30 and 50 people helping.
Yeah, they have big.
And I don't have that means. Not only do I not have the means to do that, it's not so much my personality. I'm not great at asking. Of folks. I'm good at doing.
Yeah.
But it's difficult for me to just say, hey, I want to take your time, especially right now because my friends are in hospitality, and most of them are killing themselves trying to survive. Yeah. And I would, I'm loath to say I want to take some extra time from you. While you don't have lots of income and while you are trying to pick up shifts at places that are running at 50% capacity. But those are areas that I can improve on.
Definitely. That social media stuff, man, I think you gotta put some money behind those posts because they want to get paid for sure.
Well, it's not just that. It is the newspapers and a lot of the radio stuff. And we just were talking, you're kind enough to have me in here. Because, as you say, you're trying to build content and such. And I will take this and hopefully put it out there. You'll put it out there. And I'll reach some people that I wouldn't have otherwise, which is the intent. but the radio shows in town and the newspapers in town, while there are a couple of interviews, uh, it really is buy an ad and we will write an article. So it's not PBS. It's a everybody's out chasing a dollar, and that's fair enough. I get that.
Yes, definitely.
But it does make it more difficult. We complain about politics and the money in politics. Um, but right now, I mean, I'm the perfect example. There's no other avenue. So I had some money, but I don't have tons, and I can't self-finance. I mean, even if I could self-finance when I started this, I can't self-finance now because I'm essentially starting a brand new business. Um, but it's all a learning experience.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I take the positives with it. It is kind of what it is, and fortunately, if anybody's heard it, it's going to be me. I mean, I'd like to think that if I'm on the commission, I will do good. But if I'm not there, I'm sure Key West will continue to be Key West. So.
What are some of the things that you would bring to the commission, like as that group? You know what I mean? Because you'll be fitting in there.
Mm-hmm. I think first of all, I'm pretty pragmatic. I mean, we've gotten to this political. You've got to be woke on the left, or you're super all right, and I'm really pretty in the middle. Or I've always thought I was in the middle. I suppose it depends on the scale you're looking at. I've owned my own business, and I continue to own my own business. I own my own home. I'm trying to pay my bills. I've got a small family. She's going to go to school. So all of those concerns that you would say, safety. I want her to, I want Isabella, my daughter, to be safe in town. I want my staff when I have the bar to be safe. All of those things. On the other hand, I understand the social movements that are going on. I understand that government has a role to play. It's not the be-all, end-all role, but it has a role to play. You need a large body to facilitate certain things. School. Everybody contributes to school. Police. Everybody contributes to police. Fire. Everybody contributes to fire. Those are government entities. Transportation. We talk about housing, but transportation is as important. You can't have an affordable house if you can't get up the road to work. Then it's just a house. And so transportation is a shared thing, and it's not a moneymaker. I went to college and I got a degree in political science, and one of the and I remember so distinctly, one of the first courses I took in terms of political science is the professor saying, look, there are certain things that government does that is not profitable on the books. Mm-hmm. Our military does not turn a profit. That's a cost center. But without being secure, you can't have costs. You can't have profit centers. You can't have businesses that do well. You can't have, it's security, and how much is security worth? So there's that argument. So the transportation, the buses. The city just bought some smaller buses to fit down. We were talking about Bahama Village, but one of the issues that they've got in that part of town, and I'm concerned about it because the commissioner obviously deals with the whole city, is that the buses really don't go. They go down White Street, but they don't go into the Bahama Village area. So just using that part of town, they've just gotten some smaller buses. All right, easy solution, but you have to do it. And so hopefully, and even though the city changes constantly, you get for some of the older generations who have a tough time with transport. I'm not even talking about getting on a bike and some workers, because they can get around. But for your aged population, if you want to go to the store, if you want to just get out of your neighborhood, having a smaller bus is important. And that's always going to be a cost center. It costs to do it. You can charge people $1 or 50 cents. You can defray some of the cost. But that's the government's job, is to help us have a society. Because I ran a business, I understand that certain things cost. But we talked about it. They cost, but they shouldn't cost
Extra.
Yeah, if you say it's going to cost $10, it should be $10. And I understand that some things change, but there's a limit to how much they should change. I think I have. I'm going to try and phrase this nicely. While I know most of the people who are on the commission or who are in positions of authority in the city, I'm not their pal. And I think government at lots of different levels can be a bit too chummy. The commission's job is to provide oversight for the city. Yes, it's to have new ideas and that, but at its core, we've got to make sure that what we have runs effectively. And that's a really boring conversation. But if you want to paint your fence in Old Town, you've got to get a permit. You've got to go to Hark. I'm not talking about a different color. I'm talking about the same color. So I had aqua and it's blue. If I wanted to repaint it blue, I'd have to go and get a permit. I'd have to go and sit through hearings. Unless you know the right people, and then you might be able to get staff approval. But now you have an unfair system, and it goes back to starting a new business. And so that you have those sort of problems that should be better. And that's a process. What do you do if you want to paint something? What's the process? When I was a hotel manager, I was trained in Six Sigma, which is quality is job one. They're all much the same. And you look at it, and you look at the start, and you say, to accomplish this, here is the roadmap, essentially. This is what it should look like. This is what it actually looks like. And even in your life, you can do this with all sorts of different things. And all of a sudden, you have a little spike. You're supposed to make a decision on the color, but there are actually 16 different stakeholders. And so instead of it being one little square where you say a decision is made, you have to go through this whole thing. Well, it's about taking those big jumbles and paring them down to something easier. So if I want to open a business, is there a tick sheet for me to get to say, you need this permit, you need this permit? And yes, there are some additional things. If you have food, here's a little branch. But those should all be as efficient as possible. And I don't think it would be that hard for you to go out and find somebody who was building something and say, yeah, I was trying to put a generator in the building. And it took me 3 months to get the permit to get the generator because engineering, even though it was the same application, engineering said they were missing something because it was over in the building department. And so I had to eventually go in and talk to the person in the building department, get a copy of the same thing I gave the city, and bring it over to the other person so that they had 2 copies now. And I'm not making that up. That stuff happens all the time. And so I think just by me saying it's unacceptable to have that inefficient system, which I don't think anybody's doing right now. Or if they are doing, they don't have as much support as they could. But number 2, there's nobody on the board from hospitality. And so Mark Rossi talks about being a bar owner, and that's absolutely correct. And so he's from hospitality. And a lot of the things he says about the hospitality industry being sidelined are correct. And Mark and I disagree on a number of things. But I absolutely agree with him that throughout this whole pandemic, one of the main drivers in town, which is our hospitality industry, has been treated horribly. Decisions have been made without notice. They've been changed on a regular basis. Code enforcement has fined some of your lowest paid workers in this town instead of educating, instead of going out and finding a positive solution. When I look at hostesses, right or wrong, being fined $500. I mean, how much do you think a hostess makes? That's a massive hit. And how much effect does it have on everybody else in town? I would argue probably not a whole lot, other than it was certainly out in the press. But these poor kids are killing themselves trying to survive. Line cooks and hostesses and musicians, artists And I'm not saying that you shouldn't follow rules, but I am saying you can only get so much blood from a stone. And
So, what would your suggestion be in that situation?
it is all about education. So I would say that today is probably better um, than it was a few weeks ago, and it's because people have it takes time and education, and that's hard. It's hard to be patient. Because you say there's a pandemic and our lives are on the line. Oh my God, you got to do it. But if you don't have people believing that, so there's a core group in this town who very clearly say everybody should always have their mask on. Everybody should be inside. You and I have a social distance between us, so we're not wearing masks. But there are people who say you should have your mask on. And so, okay, I think we have made a decision that we are far enough apart, and we both have masks, and we were wearing masks when I got here, and so we have made an educated decision. And I think the county probably has it more in line with what I would do, which is I'm a boat captain, so I'm out on the boat, and do I want to? If I'm alone on the boat at the dock, do I need the mask on? And I would say probably not, because I'm alone on the boat outside. Now, walking down Duval Street, where there are lots of people, and one of the suggestions, actually, I think Ryan had said it at one of the debates, and I think Mr. Kaufman had mentioned it in one of the online meetings. You say, well, we'll have like a fantasy zone. The Duval corridor, gotta have a mask on all the time. If you're up in Newtown, where I live, and I want to take my dogs out for a walk, as I did last night, I didn't run into anybody. Mm-hmm. So, and it's easy to say, well, we should have common sense for code enforcement police. And while I criticize code enforcement, they were put in a horrible position. They were cannon fodder, because they were trying to enforce something that the city, but even bigger, the county, the state, the country, is having a debate about. I will tell you that I think masks are good. At the very worst, they're not bad. So wear a mask. Mm-hmm. It's whatever. Put it on and go about your life. But if you have a core group, and I did at the bar, you are putting your bartenders and your servers and your hosts and hostesses in this horrible position of being enforcement in those bars. I had a bartender spit at, and a number of bars have had that happen. And I don't want to put somebody that's getting paid less than $10 an hour plus the whatever tips they can get. Their job is to be friendly, because they're working for tips and gratuities. Their job, as soon as I make them enforcement, it's counterintuitive to what they're actually there for. They're providing a service and supposed to be friendly and accommodating. I mean, yes, there are always rules, but now all of a sudden you get up out of your seat, you don't put your mask on, and as the manager of the place, that's my job. I can be the enforcement, but there's only one of me. Yeah. And so there are going to be gaps, and there are going to be holes, and you can only do your best. And people say, yeah, but then you're hiring the wrong type of people. And I say, nonsense. That's why you have supervisors and managers. That's why you do constant training. Yeah. You can hand me a rule book, but sometimes you need a little bit of coaching.
Definitely.
You look at professional golfers. They have guys that follow the groups around, because they say, yeah, I know, they're professionals.
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, I know the rule, but I'd like a ruling. I need help from somebody else. Let's work this out. I think that's true, here in town. So there was a singer who got fined, and from all accounts, they had their mask on. It fell down at the last song or last two songs, and code had been just waiting and fined them. And somebody actually paid the fine for the musician. But that's just jerky.
Yeah.
You have somebody who's trying to do the right thing. And they get penalized, and that is true for the pandemic. It's true about a lot of things. When I talk about the building permits, I know a lot of people who try and do the right things, and the process is so painful that the next time it comes around, they say, I'm
Yeah.
going to get somebody to come around on Saturday.
Yeah.
Because you can find somebody to dig a ditch and put a line in for electric. you can find all those people to do it, so it's safe. They're the same people who work for all the companies, but they'll come out on their own and do it. And then you go to the city and you go, oh, I'm really sorry. And the city says, yeah, you bad. And then you get a permit after the fact. But it should be easier to do it up front. And you're laughing because you know it. You know that that's what happens. And the fact that happens tells you that it's broken. So to your question, what do I bring? I think I bring a sense of realism.
But what do you think? You think once you get in that position, you won't just like fall in line? Like, because a lot of people, once they get in there, it's over. Now I'm in. Now I'm one of the...
and I think my wife would agree I can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. But as I said, I know all these folks, but I don't hang out with everybody. I'm not looking to make a friend. I'm not looking to make enemies.
Yeah.
And you have to work together and you have to build teams. But I've been in charge of a lot of things. I've been a general manager of a hotel. I've been a director of a company that did assisted living, which is a whole different conversation in town.
That was here in Key West?
No. I lived in England for 10 years.
In England?
Yeah.
Across the pond?
Across the pond.
Did you talk you got the accent and all that?
If I go back, I'll pick up, your inflections are different. But I worked for a company called Sunrise Senior Living, which had assisted living and dementia care. And I've been a hotel GM, and I worked in hotels for a lot of years here in Key West. I own my bar, so I've been in charge of stuff.
Did you work at the assisted living before you did the hotels?
No, I did hotels. I always say assisted living is the same as a hotel with a different checkout policy.
Yeah.
One of the questions I got at one of the debates was, what do you bring to the younger people? I said, look, I am a big fan of hospitality. I love hospitality. I love working in hotel. I started at the Hilton down here, and I helped open Sunset Key, and I worked as a sales manager at the Pier House for a little while, and then I moved to England, and I worked for a Sheraton at Heathrow Airport, which is 400 bedrooms, so that was a different beast altogether from resorts.
Yeah.
Became a GM of a small hotel in a town called Basingstoke, and then I worked for the assisted living, and I opened a community. So again, very different. So it's not just about welcoming people in; it's welcoming people in who don't necessarily want to be there, who need assistance, who need help, who can't do for themselves. And so we had nurses and we had care assistants.
All I'm thinking about is like feces and.
Look, I can unclog a toilet with the best of them. You give me a garbage bag, I'll put that on my arm. I can fix things, which actually was perfect for a bar. So,
make you appreciate that bar some though, right?
Made me appreciate it, but yeah, I mean, I always say I'll never be an electrician because that can properly hurt you. But I can do plumbing because even though I'll screw it up, the worst that happens, I have to take a shower after. But so I've done lots of different things. But customer service, and understanding people and working together. But I was in charge. Somebody's got to make a decision. Somebody's got to, especially at the care home. When you make a mistake at a hotel, you have to give out a free breakfast.
Yeah, that's right.
You give a discount.
Little comp,
no big deal.
Yeah, two drinks.
We'll figure it out. Little points. All good. There are lots of ways to fix problems. When you mess up at a care home, people can die.
Yeah, things go really wrong.
And that is a whole different level
of stress.
And it can be incredibly rewarding because, and I've got some great stories about, especially with dementia care. Families who really struggled and then put their family member in our community, and because they got the right amount of care, because it was individualized, because we worked really hard, their relative improved, and they can see it. And so, although dementia and Alzheimer's is awful for a family to deal with, once you see your loved one thriving in an environment, it's much easier to accept that person may not be exactly who you remembered them being, but they're healthy and they're happy and they are in their new personality pretty exceptional. And there were some really fantastic stories of families who came up to me and said, we have struggled for years, and now we're sleeping through the night. We know that our family member is safe and happy. But in situations like that, you're in charge. You have to make a decision. And so I don't have a problem, whether I'm a commissioner or otherwise, saying these are things that need to be done. We have to make a decision. And lots of people talk about how long it takes to get things done. And I do think that sometimes it's because, extra information is good. Input is important. But there comes a time when you have to say, right,
make the decision.
This is money time. And I think a lot of people have a difficult time doing that because there are consequences to decisions. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But as I said, in the care home, you made decisions, and not every decision is life and death, but some of them were.
Yeah.
And so I hope that would be the difference that I bring is a certain amount of practical experience, the ability to make a decision. And I do think I listen to all the different sides so that I can make a decision. I don't think I know everything. I know I don't know everything. But I can make a decision. And so far, most of them are pretty okay. I can't control the pandemic, so that's, but, when I look at the bar and all the things, I look back and say, could I have done something different that would have put me in a better position? And I'm comfortable that we were as nimble as possible. But sometimes, regardless of doing things the way you should, they don't work out the way that you want them to. But then you have to pick yourself up and say, right, how am I reinventing myself? What am I doing next? And I know you're in the same position.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you say, what did you do wrong in your photography business? Nothing. At the beginning, people said, oh, you should have X number of months of reserve capital and da.
Yeah, you just don't understand. It's not that easy to just do. You
it's
you
not
got
that
a
easy.
mortgage, you got a car payment, you got umpteen amount of bills. You're paying thousands and thousands. See, a lot of people don't pay that money. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't understand, like, when you paying mortgage, they can't really fathom that you're paying $6,000-$7,000 every month just to make ends meet. I'm like, one of my bills is almost $3,000 by itself.
Yeah.
That's just one, and there's a few other ones, and they're not like they're tiny. You know
and
what
when
I mean?
And then when you look at the restaurants and the bars, I mean, I had 2 different buildings that are connected, so it's all one big thing. That's a big nut.
Like, you got to pay thousands of dollars.
They're big numbers.
I know.
They are big numbers. and that is what I really don't think a lot of the people on the commission get, or they say they get. But, so we'll talk about Aqua. You had rent for the whole place. We bought the business and we had refinanced some stuff. We had rehabbed an entire building to build Sidebar. And all of those numbers lined up and were fine, so long as we were open. But, the bars have been closed more this year than they've been open.
What do you think we could do there? Like, how could we open bars? Like, is there any way that you think they could open them?
The state has said bars are closed.
Even to the state. What you got any other suggestion you think? Like mask in the bar or social distancing?
So if your rule for the restaurant is that you have to be a certain amount, and I think they had a meeting recently with the head of the professional regulations folks. And I wasn't there, but I had some conversations with people who were, and one of the conversations was static versus active. So in restaurants, you have a static customer. They're sitting down at a table. Mm-hmm. And what they're saying is, as long as we space it out, these people are together, they're family, hopefully they're in their safe group, and we sit them down, we space tables apart, and they're sitting where they're supposed to. And so there's not lots of movement around. And so static is less of a risk versus a bar where everybody's hanging out at the bar, all tucked in together and running around. And so where you have all that movement.
Yeah.
So if a static customer, if you're following
Yep.
my words, if the static customer is safer, I don't understand why having nachos in front of you is the barrier to being safe or not. So I'll use Aqua. We do shows. So if you say I need a static customer, well, that's all right because we have static customers. We encourage people to sit in their seats. It's a show bar. It's a show. So no problem. So we're going to separate the tables out. We're going to create distance. We're going to sit everybody down. You have your masks on. And if that rule is okay for restaurants, then it should be okay for a bar. Because it's not about drinking, because you say, well, that creates inhibitions, and so the alcohol is bad, but you're drinking while you're eating. You can't tell me people are going to whatever restaurant in town and having their burger and their 17 beers, and the burger is going to stop them. It's just not. So that's kind of one. If that set of rules is safe, then it's safe for bars. There's the argument. I mean, I think we've just done the whole thing wrong from a national level. And
that's from the top.
I think we just screwed it up.
Yeah.
All these other countries out there locked it down. The government said we're going to help folks pay their bills and stay where you are, and we'll get through it. And they're starting to get through it.
Man, I don't really say it much, but I think that I think that they wanted the numbers to go up a little bit from the top, man. I think that they had, it's like a lot of political stuff going on in there. It's like you account for this much death. This much death happens, and then it's like you can go this way or you can go that way.
Yep.
And you choose to go this way. Like, why?
I think there was a collective shrug, and
everybody in the back of their mind knew that the numbers were gonna go crazy. Everybody knew.
And you either have to, and I've read lots of stuff. You either have to say, I'm just going to be cold about it, and X number of people are going to die. But it's not other people are going to die. Somebody in my family might die. And if that's your position, if you say it's only a 0.04% death rate.
Well, that's your family because they're in tune with the world. But when you're at this level right here, these people never have to talk to anybody. They could go bury themselves for 2 years, and I'll see you in 2 years. I'm going to be in Iceland for the next 2 years, and everybody will bring me my vetted food. Everything will be going through, and I will just...
But if you say whatever the percentage is, and so we've got a population of 330 million and times 0.04, and so we're going to have X number 100,000 people die, and I accept that. I'm in charge. So be it. I don't agree with it, but at least you've made a decision, which is what I'm talking about. So I can disagree with your decision, but that's your decision. Or you say, I really want to minimize all of the people who are going to get sick and possibly die. And so we need to take these corrective measures, and we're going to listen to the doctors and scientists and do those things. But as soon as you politicize it, whatever position you have, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. So it's all well and good for Key West to have very strict regulations, and the county to have somewhat less restrictive but still strict regulations, because Florida doesn't. And so in Central Florida, the sheriff who just said you can't wear a mask into my office. Well, if I get somebody visiting from that county, it's clear that it's not that important to them. And the thing that I've said is you get a well-meaning person come down from middle of Florida, whatever county, and they say, you know what, we understand we're traveling, we're going to do our best. And they go to Key Largo, and Key Largo says, in the county you need to wear a mask if you're around people, social distance otherwise. Be respectful. They say, you know what, fair enough, we're visiting, we're going to do that. And so they do that. Nobody gives them a whole lot of grief because there's a gray area and nobody's going to be a jerk to them. And then they go to Marathon, and again, they say, we want you to social distance where appropriate if you're out on the beach, but wear a mask if you're inside, and da, da, da. whatever the rules are. They say, yeah, we just did that in Key Largo, no problem. And so they do it and nobody says a word to them. And then they show up in Key West and they walk down Duval Street and it's not very crowded. So they think that they're social distancing and they had their mask on when they were at the hotel and they, whatever. And then somebody takes a picture and says, I just rode my bike down Duval Street. Nobody's wearing a damn mask and these people don't care about us.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they do care. Maybe they're trying to do their best. And this goes back to the education part.
I had somebody take a picture of me like that. I was pretty pissed off. I ain't gonna lie. I had my hanger for my ear.
Yep.
And just walk riding on one of them little go-kart looking things and just pull out the phone and started recording me. Turned my camera and started recording them. I said, look at this shit, man.
And that's the problem is suddenly we've turned into all the do-gooders of the world.
Karen
like we don't make
everywhere.
mistakes.
That's Karen.
Yeah, but that is. But you're selling lemonade on the street as a little kid. You don't have a permit. And I agree with wearing a mask. I agree with trying to do the right thing. But I also think that we are all flawed in our own way. And sometimes, you forget, or sometimes whatever.
Yep.
I'm not even going to make excuses. Sometimes you think you're doing right, and somebody else doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to stop that. I think we need to, I would like to have a unified set of rules, but because we don't, I think you kind of need to accept the fact that some people, I'm not talking about the jackass who just says, I'm not wearing a mask because I can't breathe. Yeah, surgeon operates on you. He's wearing a mask. She's wearing a mask. They're fine. You're going to be okay. I'm talking about you and me who says, yeah, I get the mask mandate. I'm happy to do it. But there are so many weird little things in it. You go to a restaurant, and everybody goes and sits down and there are no masks to be seen. It's a flawed set of rules. So, okay, let's all try and do our very best. I get it. It is, I think it's worse than the flu. Absolutely. But let's treat it like that. If I am sick, how about I not be an asshole?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So
that's it.
if I have the potential to be sick, how about I not be a jerk?
Yeah.
And that's why you wear the mask. That's it.
There's accountability for the not wearing the mask, but no accountability for the $20 million.
There are 3 people running for mayor. And I certainly have my criticisms of the current mayor. And I've talked about code and I've talked about the city manager. I will say they're all trying to do their best. And so when I say I want to be on the commission, it's not to just say you screwed up, because that's not the intent. But I think the experience that I have and the different experiences that I've had would allow me to be in a position to say, is there a better way to do this? So when the city manager and the mayor and code enforcement said we're going to have this rule, if I had been there and the current commissioner had not, I would like to think that I would have said, hang on, this is how a bar and a restaurant work. If this is what you're trying to accomplish, understand how they work, because I don't think anybody understood or understands how they work, because there's not any input. I wish there was, but there's not. To say, you're asking the hostess to be the front line and she's making $9 an hour.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's too much of an ask. You're even asking code to do certain things and they're making, I don't know, $15, $16 an hour. And they don't have the same gravitas that a police officer has. And I'm not saying arrest people, but what's important, what's not important, and let's prioritize.
With that being said, is anything else you want to,
No,
touch
I think a lot of people just don't. I'm this guy who owned a bar who's running for commission.
I know you from, but like from this conversation, I see that you're very in tune with everything that's going on throughout town, and that's awesome to know.
And that's all. I don't have some grand agenda. And I don't think the town is this horrible, horrible place, nor do I think it's perfect. We're somewhere in between. I'm trying to get in there. I think I originally started with Billy by saying, we have a 12-year term limit and he's been at 11 years and it's an extra election. But I still believe that if you're going to have term limits, you're going to have term limits. And so we've got a few commissioners who've been there for a very long time. And with no ill will, you got to I get you have experience after you've been there for a while. But there's a reason that people like term limits. And I think in our city, in this town, I think they have a place. Get some new ideas and some new energy.
Blood in there,
it's hard. It's a hard job, and so sometimes you just need a fresh face, and it doesn't mean that the current commissioners disappear. They're a resource. So I'm not saying he's done with life, because he certainly isn't. And he lives down the street from me. But I am saying I think I've got a different energy and a different perspective and a different approach. And I think right now, with all of the things going on, that is probably what we need to do.
Well, that's definitely good to know. And with that being said, it's definitely been a great interview, man. I just want to thank you for coming on the show, Kimball, and telling my guests, about, so many different things. If you guys have a chance, go and check out Kimball at, what is it? Do you have like a Facebook or anything?
I've got Facebook, Kimball for Commissioner with the number 4. And it's kimballforcommissioner.com, and it's kimballforcommissioner@gmail.com. We didn't want to get too overly complicated, so Kimball for Commissioner. Or go to my personal Facebook page, send me a note. Go to Aquaholics website and send me a note. I'm easy to find. I'm absolutely super easy to find. So if there's a question, if there's a concern, if you think I just need to be quiet or say more, then send me a note. Try and be nice. I try and be nice to everybody too.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Kimball Ingram, Commissioner for District 3. If you guys have a chance, go ahead and check him out. Get out and vote. I believe early voting has already started, and it goes.
Tomorrow is election day.
Tomorrow's election day.
Tomorrow is election day,
so you guys need to get out there and vote. Kimball, thank you for coming on the show. I'm DP. Kimball Ingram.
Thanks, sir.
We're out.